It's my pleasure to introduce David Gzesh, legal counsel from Gzesh Law. He's a long history and lots of experience in the money space to hear to moderate this panel on the new face of skill gaming. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to David. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. I probably have the easiest job in the world today. We've got a panel here with 4 luminaries in the skill gaming field, and I think I perhaps have the best seat in the house. What I'm going to do is ask everybody to do an introduction for themselves, tell what their perspective may be on the future of skill gaming, what we're calling the new face of skill gaming is going to look like going forward. I happen to have your names down on a piece of paper. You sat down in the right order. That's great, but let's get started. Wim?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Wim Stocks. I'm with Virgin Gaming. I'll give you a little background first. I've been in the game publishing business for just about as long as there's been a game business. Was involved in the early days of GT Interactive when we were merged with Infogram. We bought Hasbro Interactive. We changed the name to Atari. That was all in the span of about 10 years. And went for my own company, sold the company to THQ, and after that stint, always on the game publishing side, sales, marketing, licensing, distribution, and after my stint at THQ, was approached by 2 young men from Toronto who had, in my mind, one of the greatest video game ideas I've ever heard of, and that's an online platform that lets people play video games for money. And this was, at the time, the company was called World Gaming, not World Winner, World Gaming. And was an easy sell for me to come on board. At the time, still very connected to the publishing business, saw that every publisher was looking for ways of monetizing the online play of video games, and this is probably one of the best concepts I had seen and had privilege to become part of. One of the things that, and I'll talk a little bit about the company in a bit, and consider one of the sports games we work with this year, there will have been 2 billion matches played online over the course of 1 year prior to our proposition and the integration of our proposition to the video game space. There was no other way other than maybe some DLC and some cosmetic things to sell to those players. No other way to monetize that. So, and we know we're not doing something inauthentic. This is something that our community of players want to do. If you've ever played a video game with your friend and you say, I'm gonna kick your ass in a game of Halo or FIFA, and usually there's some stake involved, all we've done is bought that online and done it with cash and prizes. Our model is really just on the video game platform today. We do have a mobile platform in development, but we're working in collaboration with Sony and Microsoft today. Our integration in some cases is a platform integration, in some cases is purely a promotional and collaborative integration. We also work with all the key game publishers, EA, we have a great relationship with EA, with 2K, with Ubisoft, Capcom, Microsoft Studios, and our tech that enables auto authentication for matches on our platform. Do a little bit of integration work with each of the games as well as on the platform. And I'm thrilled to be here. Did I cover everything?
Thanks, Wayne. So I can't claim the provenance or pedigree that Wayne just laid out from the 70s on, still better looking than me. That's annoying. So my name's Cooper MOO. I've been at GSN since 2004. And we were one of the first in the casual game space to launch skill-based gaming, so you can play casual games online for cash prizes, completely legally in 39 states. And we can get into that later. We started off as a game company that had our own original content only. We decided we'd do some licensing right around the time I joined, about 2004 or so. We started to go out and convince some folks that it really was okay to layer on top of our platform titles like Scrabble or Wheel of Fortune or Bejeweled. which really opened up the market and brought us a lot of cred because people stopped asking us, is it legal, and just decided, well, if that brand is on top, it must be okay. And so it took off. But still, some of our original content are still of our highest revenue-generating games. We then moved into the social game space, so we also have a social casino play that's very, very strong. Took some of the same brands, we're partially owned by Sony, so we took some of the Sony brands, and again, Hasbro and PopCap and other Fremantle and Endemol titles, and brought them to the social casino space, which is an interesting intersection for what David wants to talk about between what skill-based gaming is, which is, get this right, it is consideration, which means you pay, no chance, and prize. Where social casino is consideration, you pay, there's chance, but no prize. So we touch on both of those. We're not in the RMG space as of yet. We've got people looking at that. Powerful people, smart people. And we'll see what decisions we make on that. We'll go from there. We're also in the casino, in the mobile space, but not in skill-based mobile yet. Everybody's got one in development except for this guy who's actually got one live in very short order, which impressed the hell out of us. We cherry-picked our best casino titles and brought them to an app called GSN Casino, just to be really creative. Actually, let people know what it is. And it is a top-running app on iOS, Android, and Kindle.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Paradise. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Skills. That's Skills with a Z, not with an S. And I'll challenge you to guess what we do. Quick show of hands, though, but I was just curious how many people here know what skill gaming is? Just to get an idea of who we're talking to, because I wouldn't want to waste everyone's time by explaining skill gaming if you already know what it is. And then one more, which Cooper asked, is how many people here play skill games?
Ouch. Oh, wow.
Oh, pretty good. All right. Hopefully you're playing Skills. So anyways, my background in brief, learned to program from video games, wrote a game in Pascal when I was a kid. That's basically how I found my way into software. Fast forward many years later, I've founded and built and sold 2 software companies. This is my 3rd. We founded Skills in March of last year. So a year and a half later, we are the first mobile skill-based platform in existence. Launched on Android with 10 developers and have pretty rapidly grown. I think in our first 6 days we passed 1 million downloads and kind of not looked back from there. Other things about Skills, it's very much an SDK you can drop into any mobile game. We only enable real money gaming inside of skill-based games. We actually run an algorithmic test on your game. You can enable virtual currency competition immediately by integrating our SDK. And then we basically will monitor data coming out of the game for a period of time. And if possible, we'll bring live cash gaming inside of said video game. Very much focus right now on Android games, although iOS launch is imminent. And with that, I'll pass off to Mark.
Really?
I think we just had our first announcement of the panel. So my name is Mark Donovan. I was originally one of the young guys trying to get into the market that Wim was just describing. I had a dream of kicking my friend's butt at Halo and Counter-Strike, and we went out looking for a platform to do it on, and nothing existed at the time. So we decided very naively that we were going to build it out in our college dorm room, and close to a decade later, here we are. So I had the very fortunate ability to work with some investors to spin Xspire out of Viacom. Does anyone know what Xspire is? Okay, so social app, kind of like a Skype meets MSN Messenger meets video recorder for video games. And we got 23 million users on the PC, and what we're doing now is taking all that social platform and the user base that we have, and we're bringing them skill gaming for PC games. So you want to play in a tournament, you want to play in a challenge, you want to drop into a server for cash or tokens, we're building that out, and we're providing publishers and developers with the ability to integrate into that very quickly and easily.
Okay, sure. Okay, we have mobile representative, we've got a PC-based platform represented here, and we have a some very large skill operators who are also dabbling, I guess, in the social area too. I'm going to ask the panel just for their opinions. What do they see developing in the next 6 months to 1 year with respect to any competition for customers or growth of the market between the social gaming folks and the skill gaming folks, or even the real money gaming folks? The 800-pound gorilla that lives down in Las Vegas, where I'm from. And coming up, that's.
I can, let me talk from, we're not in the social casino space, but purely the video game space at this point. One of the things we see coming in the next 6 months, we operate tournaments in a number of different ways, at small scale, head-to-head matches, as well as big tentpole events. We're running a Halo tournament right now in conjunction with Microsoft, kind of an offline live event, online hybrid that will culminate at PAX at the end of August. Cool. And we've got 150-some thousand people playing in this tournament, at least on the online portion of it. In the next 6 months, we're seeing it now. We're seeing it growing every day. The interest from sponsors who get involved and attach their brands to these events is growing rapidly, and it's a great way for them to attach to an audience that's difficult to reach with other media and with other advertising, and it's great for us obviously because it brings another monetization stream into this overall proposition. The same time as these tentpole events are going on, the other thing that we're doing, and it will take time, it's player behavior modification, but one of our key initiatives with our friends at Microsoft is to develop the daily habit, getting people to play day in, day out for a $1 match with their friends, a $5 match, get all their buddies signed up for a FIFA 16-person FIFA tournament that can set up in 5 minutes and run the course, run its course over the course of a couple of hours. The whole notion of developing that daily habit is something we're working on, something Microsoft's working on. We really actually see the bigger opportunity from a monetization perspective is tapping into that and developing that outside of the development of the big tentpole events. So that's where we're focused, and that's what we'll be doing in a big way the next 6 to 12 months.
So some of the big questions that we were talking about before lunch that come out, not exactly what GSN is doing, but the questions of will money gambling be legalized online? If that happens, how will it affect skill-based gaming? Will we see this rush of people that just exodus our space and everybody wants to go gamble, or is it appreciably different? And the Venn diagram circles only overlap a little bit. We don't know. We certainly have our opinions, and they're different on some levels, but we'll have to see how it plays out. There probably is something to be learned from what happens in Europe, where skill-based gaming exists now and online gambling is legal, and still they both exist, so skill games hasn't disappeared. Sometimes when we're doing a PR spin, we'll say, hey, if it goes legal, that just means that all those folks that didn't play skill-based games because they were worried about it will say, oh, well, it's legal, fine, I'll go play skill-based games. Maybe it'll influence some other markets to come into the play. Like, it's not, we don't think, legal in China to do skill-based games. However, if you watch the way that the Chinese gamble, and I'm happy to hear different opinions on this, but from what we've looked at, they don't like slot machines like we do, that random chance element. They actually like skill-based gambling, or if it, all kinds of different games and have different elements of skill-based. If you got a chance to play and win because of skill, you're going to be better off. So I talked to Ren at GDC. They're here again at Casual Connect. They're trying to figure out how does this happen? How can we get skill-based games in China? I think that could happen in the next 6 to 12. In terms of what we're doing, I won't go into too much detail on that, but it's not just more of the same. There's going to be some big changes and big moves that have to be made in the next 6 to 12.
So I think there are a couple of things that are very interesting that are happening in skill gaming in the next 12 months. One is, so we just actually, I think the three of us on this panel recently participated in a survey that culminated in a study showing that the skill gaming market is estimated to be a $670 million market by $670. That would not be good. $671 million market by the end of 2013. We've also talked to researchers in the space who believe that it may be as large as 10 billion if the market was opened up. And what I mean by opening up, and we can talk a lot about the different market drivers and forces that could really change skill gaming from being kind of this niche industry for the last 15 years that was pioneered by companies like GSM, and that could really become this mass market thing that many consumers engage with. One of them that we've candidly seen a lot in user experience tests is that many consumers believe skill gaming is gambling, and then they think it's illegal, and then they think they're breaking the law if they engage in skill gaming in the U.S. So when I think about 12-month predictions, I think that certainly companies doing things on mobile will rapidly change that perception, and one of the reasons being that consumers understand that apps on something like the Apple App Store are more or less blessed by Apple. So if skill gaming was released on the Apple platform, you would then have at least some knowledge as a consumer that Apple is saying this must be legal. I think there's a pretty widespread knowledge among consumers that the app stores moderate whether or not there's legal content on the systems. So there's that, that kind of branding effect and change in consumer understanding in the skill gaming space. I think the other thing that we've already started to see is basically more and more companies backing off from real money chance gaming in the U.S. over the next 12 months. We recently heard the announcement from Zynga that they're backing off on that. And one of the things to remember about the space, so right now the only place with real money chance gaming live in the U.S. is Nevada, 2.4 million person population. Skill gaming currently touches 180 million Americans. So when you think about it in terms of the U.S. market and real money gaming, whether it's chance or skill-based, really you can't enable chance-based games en masse right now. There is no market in terms of people. So when I think about the space broadly, I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of awareness happening over the next 12 months around skill gaming as a third kind of monetization, particularly available to mobile developers. I also think there's going to be a lot of people prognosticating about the size of the market, whether it's 671 million, like the the Eilers research report that came out last week, or it's 10 billion, like some other researchers we've talked to. So it's a very interesting space right now.
So having the unfortunate last position, it's a little tough to say anything prescient here, but I think a couple of things are going to happen. Speaking from more of the core gaming side of things, I'm not sure if anyone saw the news announcement, but League of Legends players and other professional gamers are now actually getting the same types of visas to come into the U.S. to compete that professional sports players are getting. So one of the things that we're going to see, I think, in the next 12 months is more of a legitimization of games as sport. So more kids actually aspiring to be a professional e-athlete, if you will. And I know it sounds really funny, but keep in mind at one point in time people thought it was really funny that people would play sports professionally. And these leagues haven't been around forever, and the idea of being a professional athlete hasn't either. So I think that's one interesting thing that'll happen over the next little while and will help the skill gaming side of the market as well, especially in tournaments and that type of competition. And one of the other things that I think is going to happen is there's going to be a big success story. There's going to be a big win in the skill gaming space, whether that's from mobile or whether that's from the core space. And that's really going to create a bigger movement around it. So once we've got some, a big game that shows the model and how voracious it can be, then we're going to see more and more people jumping in, not only on the game development side, but also and the funding side, but also on the play side.
Are you looking then for, I guess, the skill game equivalent of a Chris Moneymaker for poker? Somebody's going to be the big splash?
I don't know whether it's necessarily a person that's going to do it. We're looking for our Clash of Clans or, Puzzles and Dragons, that type of marquee game that proves the mechanic and the monetization of it.
Yeah, I guess I'd say we're looking for the Angry Birds to be in the New York Times, right? and everyone and their dog to say, oh, I can build an app. At least certainly in mobile.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, Andrew, you had spoken about what looks to be a tremendous projection of growth over time and some of the drivers. You mentioned that basically it's, I guess rebranding is, known to be legal, social acceptance, what other drivers might there be? And okay, that's the first question.
So, we're a venture-backed company, and before kind of going through the motions to raise a bunch of money behind our business, one of the things we did was quite a bit of market research about the space, including independent consumer research. So we hired a company that went out and surveyed 1,000 consumers in America and actually found that on a scale of 5, 41% of Americans are interested in playing their favorite games for money in skill-based competitions. And that's either a 4 or a 5 on a scale of 5. And so when you look at just the 5s, it's more than 15% of Americans. And so when you kind of look at the number of people who are interested in engaging in that kind of behavior, and then you go and at it from the other side, which is through quite a number of different consumer focus panels, where we have a significant number of the panelists believing that it's illegal. It's pretty interesting to kind of look at that cross section between the 41% that on the one hand said they'd like to engage in this kind of behavior, and then on the other hand the numerous panelists on every single panel we've ever had that say that I would do this but I don't gamble. Those are the kinds of quotes we get. And yet businesses like World Winner and GSN have existed for 15 years. It's kind of incredible how many people misunderstand skill gaming. There's a cultural bias in America in general about people playing video games and not being a skill. And the reason I say America is because if you look at other cultures like South Korea, there already are professional video game leagues there. I think professional leagues and what's happening in the hardcore arena is incredibly encouraging for casual game makers like World Winner GSN or casual game enablers like us. I think that those are the kinds of things that are broadening and opening the market. Also, I'd just say in general, we're aware of more than a half dozen companies that are chasing and nipping on our heels to enter the mobile market in the next 12 months. So I just think, that many other entrants, some well-funded, some, obviously just noise, along with this changing perception of video games being a skill, could very well lead to opening up a much larger market than people believe. The thing to remember, if you kind of look at the traditional skill gaming space, these users are wagering on average $300 a month. And if you look at the average difference between entry fees and prizes, which is often 25% on some of these sites like a World Winner, it implies a pretty healthy revenue stream per user. I can say even in our very first month, out of the gates, we've optimized so much in the 2.5 months we've been live. But even our very first month, we generated about 25% of the revenue stream that the advertisers in the same games were generating. So it just shows how quickly this can become a revenue stream that's the size of all of the ad revenue in a mobile game, or even larger. We actually believe that the newest version of our software could actually bring that number above all of the advertising revenue being generated for the game. And of course, when the money flows, everyone piles in, right?
One of the things that I think we all have to be conscious of, and maybe it's more in our realm because we do a lot of head-to-head, is that we want everybody to have a good experience. This is when they're spending money, and they're coming in, and we obviously want them to come back over and over again. We have been over backwards to make sure people are getting a fair match. We have a skill ranking system. We don't necessarily just appeal. I think there's a lot of misnomer. We tend to be classified in the esports space, which we are certainly, but we're not entirely. And one of the things that we have to be really conscious of is we're not just attracting the pro players and elite players. We really want this to be a great experience for everybody. So the skill ranking system we take very seriously, where if you're a 2 in Madden, you're not getting schooled by someone who's a 7 or an 8. That's all in terms of the matchmaking and in a setup of matches, but it's important for us as we're building this business. We still believe we're on the early days of this, that we're doing our damnedest to make sure everybody has a good experience, it's fair, and people want to come back over and over again. I think our model, the one we use a lot, is, you know, if anybody plays golf here, what's the first thing you do? You sit on the first tee and he goes, okay, what are we playing for? What's the match? It's a $2 hole. Who are the teams? I mean, that's the behavior we're trying to model when playing in a skill-based games.
Yeah, one quick question. You talk about the importance of having a fair match and ranking players by skill. In some of the what I call skill games, there's the idea that you can move up quickly, or you can even walk in and knock off, you know, Goliath on your first game. To what extent does matchmaking dampen, or are there provisions made for what I call the aspirational goals of players that want to improve their skills, they want to be able to play against better and better people, and maybe even, you know, take a shot at, you know, the heavyweight champ or something? So, you know, does your system of matching, you know, basically allow people to rise up through the ranks quickly?
Oh, sure, yes,
you know?
Yes. It's a algorithm, a skill, it's a derivative of True Skill, the Microsoft skill ranking algorithm that we use, and as it figures in the matches that you've played against players of other skill levels. It doesn't just take, if you might have beaten somebody 7 times in a row, but they might have been a poor player, it doesn't necessarily advance you because of that. So it's a very, for us, we take it very seriously. We also take the customer service side of this. If there is a dispute of some sort, our system thankfully can recognize when somebody quits or disconnects artificially, not by a power failure or something. And if it does happen, we have to reconcile a dispute. We'll give everybody kind of a one chance or one opportunity at that, but we can also make sure if it's happened legitimately, people aren't getting abused in the process.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on Andrew's points on in terms of getting it out there and making it known. So we're on AOL for years with Greg Mills when he ran the AOL site. We've been at Pogo for years. We're on MSN. So we're in front of, I think, most of the game players that are out there and coming to mobile. So it will be interesting to see if there's some kind of psychological flip that happens if it does get, if RMG is legalized, real money gaming is legalized, or if there is, as Mark was saying, some kind of big title that comes across and says, well, everybody's doing this. More people game now than, more money is made in games than movies, as you guys all know. So is that going to flip at some point? We'll see how it happens. Certainly, fair matching, we've got a patented algorithm. Actually, Richard, do you want to take this question? Seriously? So this is our VP of Marketing, who's been here for 10 years. So. Yes, if you came in and you dropped the $20 that everybody does when they first come in, and you lost it the first day, you'd never come back, right? We'd never see you again. So obviously you've got to win, or you're not going to get that hit and that rush. And to do that, we've got to match you with somebody who's relatively close to your skill level. And we wouldn't have players, and we do have players that have been here longer than Richard and I have been here on the site, that are playing for all those years if they didn't like the experience that they had, and they wouldn't like it if they just kept shoveling money into our coffers. It's an entertainment spend. I'm going to harass Andrew just slightly when he says they wager about $300. We never say the word wager. Okay. It's a cash entry fee. It's an entertainment spend, because that is how we play the game. And it sounds like it's semantics, so I'm trying to cover my ass partially. I don't have good knowledge, so I want to be, but it's also about, it is an entertainment spend. It's a different way to look at it, but that's how it's spent. If not, you have sharks that come in, they try and shark, and they realize they can't, and they leave. Or you have folks that want big action that come in, and they're gamblers, real gamblers, and they say, well, I can play and win for money. But they realize that they're going to win, on average, unless it's a big tournament, $1.60 or $5, and they're like, that's not what I'm looking for. Now, in a big tournament, there are thousands of dollars. That can be done. There are people that make their living with us, right? Okay, so that happens. But for the most part, we've got, a different kind of talent player.
So, yeah, I guess a couple of things when you think about the space and you think about people coming in and player matching. One thing that's interesting and that no one has touched on so far is that a user who wins on their first play is 50% more likely to be retained than a user who loses. Yeah. So we can all pretend that we're altruistic with player matching, but the reality of it is the bleed rate on people joining the systems would be very, very high if they were losing too frequently. The other thing to think about is each of these systems, all three represented here, and I guess I haven't tried yours yet, as it's still in beta, but each of the systems, you're making a deposit into the system, and if you kind of look at, I would say, other systems that you could kind of correlate the skill gaming tournament market to, one being online poker. Online poker, 70% of the money deposited is actually never withdrawn. And you ask yourself, why? And so, I think when you look at that and you look at the online poker space, and maybe even less, depending on the site, if they ever withdraw, it does need to be thought of it in the form of entertainment, and very much needs to be thought of. In a lot of ways, skill gaming is creating a pay-for-play system like arcades. I mean, people actually used to spend 25 cents per play on a video game back in the day. And, I think that's a really different behavior pattern, and it's something that could very well come back and become part of our culture again. And, of course, the ramifications of that would be huge for the market.
And I love how we're talking about the cultural mind shift, like just something happening, and you can't really remember a day when people didn't participate in that. I keep on thinking about the free-to-play model. Mafia Wars and games like that in the core gaming space, when guys like K2 Networks brought all these free-to-play games from Asia that nobody had ever heard of. Why would I, give a game away for free and then charge for things in it? Who would ever pay for that? And now that's the de facto way of making money in games. And so I think this is, I think that this has the potential of being a revenue opportunity, if not as big as, close to or in the same ballpark as free-to-play games.
Andrew made a very interesting statement, and I'm going to try to throw some cold water on all of this. Okay, I think it was, when the money flows, everybody wants in. I come from an online poker background. What I can tell you is when the money flows, everybody wants to kill you and take it over. So the question that it's a serious one is that and this is for everybody on the panel, what's the likelihood of some sort of regulatory action or illegalization coming along that may impact you in the rush to protect a future market that, let's say, the real money gaming folks are not going to get into within the next 12 months, within the next 2 years, by rolling out state by state, which is where they're stuck. Are you worried about some federal legislation perhaps coming along and, I guess, leveling the playing field to get rid of these evil social casinos and catching you guys up in the meantime?
I actually think it'll be very different legislation between the two different industries that form within, particularly in mobile gaming. And just to jump back to the when the money flows comment, one thing I left out on that was that I think a lot about when I build a business about building a value proposition that considers the payout per units of effort for the participants in the ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, part of the reason I think that skill gaming is going to become so broadly adopted in the next couple of years is because technologies like what we've built can be built. If you go on our dev portal, it's just dev.skills.com, you can see somebody integrate a game from the ground up in 8 minutes. 8 minutes. And they're generating a revenue stream that's 25% of their advertising revenue. So you have to ask yourself, how much do you have to give a developer before it becomes very meaningful for them to drop this thing in? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if everybody's doing it, then it becomes potentially worth regulating. I actually believe that social casino is going to be regulated in the not distant future. I think we were all talking about that before this panel. Skill gaming is simply just too small a market right now to know if it will get to a size that it will be under the federal scrutiny. But if it did, I think it's going to be very challenging to regulate it and separate it out from other kinds of skill-based competitions. Let me comment on just a couple that we used to talk about a lot when we started the business a year and a half ago, which is the New York Marathon, for example. New York Marathon is $200 to $250 to enter, depending on if you get a discount to enter the competition. Prizes last year were $700,000 in prizes. They had a little over 40,000 entrants, so they netted $9.3 million between entry fees and prize pool. If I was going out today and I built a phone application that let you pay your entry fee and collect your prize through a phone, would it be any different than letting you play in a skill-based video game competition? Then you start arguing about our video game skill. I just think it's a very complicated thing to separate out offline skill-based competitions that are currently and have been accepted as cash competitions for literally hundreds of years, ranging from rodeos to spelling bees to marathons, fishing tournaments, golf tournaments, on, and then say, well, oh, that's skill, but when people play a video game, it's not. Although now we have these professional video game players, an entire country, South Korea, that watches them on television. At what point do you kind of pierce through and accept that video games really are a skill?
There are other forms of regulation that, I hate to keep harping on this, but I'm the lawyer on the panel. There are other forms of regulation that can come down, though, more along the lines of the consumer protections, which do not require that something have consideration, chance, and prizing. In other words, be gambling. Any sort of an endeavor that you go into where you're taking money from people for whatever it is you're trying to sell them can subject you to regulation. If that were to cross over so it looked like gambling regulation, would that involve having to retool your game so to provide all sorts of disclosures as the chances of winning, as to anti-collusion, as to anything like that?
Well, maybe some kind of standards body should be formed for skill gaming companies. Maybe that's another announcement that we can make on the panel.
I believe there's a social gaming association over in the UK. I don't think that there's a skill gaming association here, unless perhaps there's a poker federation or something out there.
Yeah, I think that's going to partially come down to operators and making sure that they're responsible. And if operators run afoul, then they take the risk of ruining it for everybody else. So one of the big things you want to do is limit the amount of money people can actually put into the system on a daily or monthly basis, so that you are sure that you're not taking too much money from people. And there are other items like collusion and anti-cheat that you have to worry about. I know nobody would probably delve too deeply into the secret sauce of their anti-cheat on the panel, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to do on the back end to make sure that you're monitoring statistics and making sure that people aren't colluding, making sure that people aren't winning too much or too little in your system.
So the code phrase in OMG is responsible gaming. I think we dropped that phrase as well. We do monitor everybody's play. There are daily limits, both on Canvas, what we call Facebook, in terms of casino with tokens, and both with cash games. It's a very individual by individual situation. You can't just set it and forget it and apply some algorithm. You talk to people, you ask them if this is a problem. They actually will come to you and say, I have a problem, help me, or they'll come and say, I'm wealthy, or it's none of your business, raise my limit. It can be all over the board, but the main thing is just being conscientious about your players, because that, of course, is who you're providing the service to, and if you're not doing it right, then you're going to go out of business.
Okay. Are age limits currently voluntary, or are those imposed by regulation at the state level?
It's 18 plus, all of us.
Is that everywhere?
Yeah, so I just want to comment. We self-regulate at 18 plus, but legally it's 13 plus in many states. So, and it's a big question on whether or not people will self-regulate at 18 plus, like the two of us, or if they'll enable that 13 plus demographic.
I was just going to say we're actually investigating now. We're making a big push in South America, and we have a lot of partners here saying we can be 17 plus. So we're looking at that. There's I guess a big difference. So we're looking at the possibilities, at least in the territory, of going to 17 plus.
We're not. Yeah. We're not, and we're not going to. And I hope they don't, for our sake.
So I think it's partially the types of play that you can allow for people too. It doesn't always have to be cash play. We've got a system very similar to an online poker site, where you've got a token or funny money type environment, and then you've got a real money environment. So obviously, if people want to participate, whether they're 18 plus or younger, for a fun currency that really has no value, they still like to participate for it. They still get the excitement of playing for something in a structured event, but you don't run the risk of having them want or have to play in the cash side because there's no other alternative for them either. So.
And I would just add that in general, the way we think of virtual currency play or systems where you can accumulate points, it's not really that different from older leaderboard systems. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun to see who is the best in the world or in their neighborhood or among their friends. So,
if someone goes ahead and makes a partnership to provide a secondary market, though, for the virtual prizing, so that you can cash them in for Amazon cards or whatever, doesn't that sort of like make it more like the real money gambling?
If
there's chance.
If there's chance, and if you could buy Amazon cards. I mean, the reality of it is, if you have a social casino game and that game allows you to take the virtual currency and purchase anything of any value, you are definitely doing real money gambling. And if you don't believe you are, you definitely are. I was a venture capitalist before I worked as an entrepreneur. We're an investor in a company called Linden Labs that many people may know, and they had a great product called Second Life. And in Second Life, you could put a credit card in and buy this currency called Lindens. Then you could go into the game and you could gamble in a virtual casino and win more Lindens. And they could even have rigged slot machines in this game. And then you could go back and withdraw the Lindens back into U.S. currency. And believe it or not, this actually grew into being a pretty large business, multi-millions in revenue, before the FBI shut it down. And so, just because somebody's doing it doesn't mean it's legal or right. You definitely want to be very careful about partnering with people into this space and make sure that they're the kind of people who want to follow above the letter of the law and not kind of scrape by, or even in some cases, let's say, give out Amazon gift cards for social casino products.
Yeah, as long as it's not Bitcoins. Okay, let's go further out than 1 year. Let's suppose it's a year from now, and the people who maybe want to kill you off and take over your space have not succeeded, and you're growing and you're sticking to your niche. Do you foresee any partnerships or industries you might want to work with, where who may have an expertise, for example, in the casino side, real money gaming, or even I thought was the extreme case was, let's say the state lotteries decide that, hey, our demographics match up pretty well with what you want. Can we start offering your games? Do you see that sort of partnership coming down the road? Maybe.
I can comment on at least where we are at this point in time. I think it's safe to say, and things obviously prevailing legislation and prevailing cultural mores are changing, where gambling is becoming more acceptable, but at the same time, there is an aspect to it that I don't think is going to change in the U.S. anytime soon. There is some unsavoriness to it, at least in its history, and in the partnerships that we have with brands that not only we're directly involved with, but indirectly involved with, and I'll reference the sports leagues as one. There's a different reason why they're not happy about gambling, because it can affect play in the league. But at the same time, we cannot have an association with any gambling company unless we are potentially going to run afoul of those relationships. They've said in certain terms and in uncertain terms that it's not a business they would look fondly upon if we were to enter. So, at least from our perspective, as long as we have those kinds of relationships, it would be difficult for us to do.
Would be legal without them or with them, it doesn't matter. So if we have that next to the door from Las Vegas or from the lotteries all saying it makes sense for us to partner.
Yeah, I'm talking about a cooperative manner rather than than fighting it over.
Right, and when I take a look at the business, and it sounds like an anti-pitch, but they don't want to get into it. They look at it and say it's a lot of hurdles, it's a lot of work, and I often have said back in the day when we first started in 05, 06, that if the original investors had known what it was going to take to make this profitable, they would have put their money someplace else. But we were so far in at that point that we just kept going until we got to the profitable point, sold the business twice, and on we go. But it was not that quick return on investment that the VCs were looking for. I think we're almost out. You're going to do questions on?
Oh, no, I can always come up with more questions.
I was going to say, thank God our VCs didn't talk to his VCs. But, you know, realistically, I think the likelihood of us doing something with the casinos in the near term is unlikely, for the same reason that self-regulation, I think, is important. There are a number of people talking about the space as a gateway drug. And, you know, I really hate that, because I entered this business because I wanted to be able to give something back to the gaming industry where we could provide a product that can allow people to monetize games without putting ads into that product. I don't like ads in my video games. I actually started this company specifically because I was playing a video game on my phone. It was a racing game, and there was a Whopper ad at the top of the screen, and I hit it by mistake, and it took me out to get a Whopper coupon. And I was so angry about the experience that I thought there has to be a better way to have a freemium supported model for mobile games, and that's I was having a good race, and it pauses you mid-race and sends you out to Burger King, and you're mad at the advertiser, you're mad at the game. Well, at least it pauses you. But you know, that comment aside, I think that, you know, that the reality of it is, again, people, you know, casinos entering the space in that way, and I've actually heard a rumor about a major operator that is looking at this, and looking at, you know, wow, we could build a gateway drug to casino, and couldn't that be profitable? I hope that it doesn't happen in the near term, and I hope that if regulation does happen in the industry, that they, you know, are careful about that kind of playover, because I think it could very much destroy the esports industry. And it'll be really sad, because I think there is a huge potential for building an esports industry. One of the things, after my last company was acquired, I was hanging out at Intuit, and one of the things that I kind of blew my mind was a research report that came through that actually said that Americans spend more of their pastime, or of their free time every day, playing video games than they do all sports combined. And it's just, when you think about it that way, you know, we spend as a culture more time playing video games than all sports, and yet there's no professional leagues in any, you know, in any major way like the NFL, NBA, NHL, to name a few. So I hope it doesn't happen, but.
I still dream of the day when I'll be able to sit down at a casino and own some noobs, but I don't think that day is rapidly approaching anytime soon. But I think it'll be interesting to see whether the casino operators can keep the new generation that's growing up with these types of games engaged with the stuff that they're offering on the casino floor right now. So the question is, are those people going to be interested in coming to their casinos anymore when they're looking for a form of entertainment, gaming related, and they're not connecting on the content? So maybe there is an opportunity where more core content can come to the casino floor and bring those types of people in.
Okay, I understand we've got about 3 minutes left. I apologize. I was going to open the floor up for some questions if anybody has any, but anybody wanted to bring? Sure.
I would love to hear some more about that algorithmic way you have of telling whether a game is a skill game.
Sure. So there are 3 different tests on whether something is a game of skill or a game of chance. The predominance test, the materiality test, and the any chance test. And so we've actually built out, the first one is determining predominance. So we've been working, so one of the reasons we founded the company is we worked with a pretty famous professor out of Dartmouth, Peter Winkler, and he helped us pioneer an algorithm that basically, it's quite simple when you think about it, and quite difficult to build. And what it does is it processes game data, and basically we can sort play and progression of play on a unique identifier, aka a player name or player ID. We can sort basically by looking at their plays over time, whether they are a skilled player or an unskilled player, and then we can basically do pairings of a skilled player versus an unskilled player, and then show what the outcome would be of each of those pairings. And more or less what you can get to is you can actually get to a growing degree of certainty that a game is skill or chance, in light of the predominance test. So like every game that we process, we can tell you, before we'll bring it live, we'll tell you to 4 digits, so a 99.99% accuracy level, whether the game is skill or chance, against the predominance test. The second one is the materiality test, which is, again, is there a material element of chance involved in the game? A great example of that would be a game like Minesweeper, which is primarily a skill-based game. Unfortunately, there can be moments in the game where you literally have to make a guess, and that guess could actually kill you and cause you to lose the game. One of the things we do against that and the any chance test is we have basically an algorithm that swaps out the random integer generation out of games. So if you and I both enter into, we have endless runners on our platform, and so an endless runner like a temple run, ours is called Cave Runner. I invite you to download it and play. But if you take a run in Cave Runner, you and I will run the exact same cave every time, or a temple run, and that's again very important. It would be quite unfair if all four of us entered into a 4-player tournament and we all ran a completely different map. Again, these are the kinds of tools we built out against the chance elements in these games to increase the level of skill. So that's one way to increase the level of skill in a game, and that's a test built out specifically by some of the, I would say, the brightest people in both computer science, statistics, and also legal. We've had some of the best people in legal working alongside us, along with those brilliant people from the stats industry, to create that model.
Tony's list.
Okay.
Right?
That's the one.
Time for one more?
Trying to massive games with very large prizes to sort of create excitement, like a game where like 1 million people enters and a humongous prize, sort of lottery mentality.
Done that.
Ours aren't necessarily lottery based or modeled, but certainly large-scale tournaments. Yeah, yes, right, absolutely. We give $1 million the last 2 years for 3 of the EA Sports games. So
We did $1 million tournament once as well.
I think we are just about out of time on this. If anybody has further questions, I'm sure that everybody on the panel will be somewhat approachable, and ask them because I really don't know that much. Thank you.